You're watching Reality Check. Two headlines on virtually the same day underlined an almost cruel twist in the turn of public affairs. On one hand, news that India continues to linger at the lowest rung of the global hunger index, 102 out of 119 countries. And on the other hand, India's godowns are so overstocked with food, grain, that we want to donate food to deserving countries. So just contrast those two images that you can see on your screen of the overstocked Food Corporation of India, godowns, and our continuing chronic inability to tackle malnutrition and undernutrition, especially amongst the very young and the very vulnerable. Now, to break this down further, the Global Hunger Index, brought out every year by the International Food Policy Research Institute based in DC, has found that India remains steadfastly low, below countries like Bangladesh, which is at 88, Pakistan at 94, Ethiopia at 97, Rwanda at 98, and then comes India at 102. The fact that this registered to all of us as a shocking piece of news is because it is, but also because public memory is short. India has been steadily dipping in the Global Hunger Index. In 2015, when the methodology changed, and so that's the right year to really look at it, India ranked at 80 out of 104 countries, falling steadily to 97, 100, 103, and then 102 out of 117 countries. A more zoomed-in picture of India's hunger comes from a group called Satva, which puts out the India Hunger Index, modelled on the global index but more localized. From this, we learn that there is alarming hunger across the heart of India. The alarming hunger states are the central and western states, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, moving eastwards towards Jharkhand and Odisha. The best performing state, the top performing state, is Kerala. And the worst 10 performing districts, out of them 5 are in Madhya Pradesh, 3 in Uttar Pradesh, and 2 are in Gujarat. So this is what the grid looks like in terms of the better performing states where the hunger level is moderate. So those are the states like Kerala, Manipur, and Goa, and the worst performing states where there's an alarming level of hunger, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, and as we mentioned, Gujarat and Odisha. So that's how it pans out across the country. If you were to look at it on a map, then you get a sense of where the problem lies. So it's the red states where you have the worst or the maximum amount of hunger, and the yellow states, it's still serious, but it's not as bad as the central swath of India where the problem really lies. And what makes this all the more ironical is that it comes at a time when the Indian Express ran a story that the Food Corporation of India has actually sent an SOS to the Foreign Ministry to help in trying to donate excess food grain to needy countries, because it says its godowns are overflowing and it has no capacity to stock excess food, but has apparently received no clear response from the MEA. Now, Indian Express reports that of the required food stock that we need for the month of October, so our requirement is about 308 lakh tons, but our availability is almost 700 lakh tons, more than double what we require. So hence that contrast we set up at the start of the show between hungry Indians, hungry Indian children, and overstocked godowns. All right, to try and make sense of this, tonight we have with us Anjali Bharadwaj, who's co-convener of the NCPRI and also part of the Right to Food movement, Vranda Bansode, who's the head India Data Insight at Satva Consulting, whose numbers we put up a short while ago, Vivek Reddy, who's a member of the BJP, and in the studio, Amitabh Dubey, who is a supporter of the Congress Party. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now, Anjali Bharadwaj, just, this is not necessarily new. We've seen this problem before where there is a glut of food grains, but yet we continue to linger at the lower end of this global hunger index. So I know that there could be multiple reasons for it, but if you were to identify the single biggest problem that is driving this, what would that be?
Look, there is a huge problem. There is an alarming level of inequality in the country. there have been any number of amount of research that has shown how in India inequality is increasing. 9 families own as much wealth as 50% of the people of the country. Now that clearly shows that many millions of people in our country are living in absolute destitution. Now when economic slowdown hits, further, there are policies like demonetization which have more adversely impacted the poor. Then naturally the first thing that gets impacted is nutrition, is what people have on their plates to eat.
Right.
So what is required is a response. We have seen this coming. There have been very clear signals that this is coming, this has been happening.
Sure.
And like you said, this is not a new phenomenon. And since 2015, there's been a constant decline also.
Yes.
India has been slipping.
Yeah, we've been sliding.
But what is the response? Now, the reality is that when you have the FCI, which is the go-downs,
the Food Corporation of India,
Food Corporation of India, the go-downs are overflowing with grains. Why isn't there a proper system of making sure that people who need food, who
are able to access
where
it,
children are going to bed hungry, are not able to access it? When the National Food Security Act was passed, the Prime Minister, who was at that time the Chief Minister of Gujarat, made a statement. He said that 5 kilograms of grain per person per month was abysmal. He said this is not a Food Security Act, this is a Starvation Act. Now what has happened in the last 5 years? Not a single grain has been increased in entitlements. We've been demanding that there should be pulses given, there should be millets given to people. No increase has registered at all.
Right, at the central level at least. Perhaps some states are trying that out. But Vrunda Bansore, I mean, you know, zooming into a little bit of your findings, it was interesting to see that it's not, of course, uniform. There are these central states that are particularly performing quite badly. And is there anything we can learn about why that is happening? I mean, why some states are doing better than others, which perhaps would help us try to find a solution to this?
Yes, some of the other things we have noticed when we were analyzing this data. And again, we keep in mind here that malnutrition is not an isolated problem. It is very deeply connected with other issues such as sanitation, water quality, also very closely linked to maternal health, right? Because these are young children and they have the issues of wasting, stunting because of chronic undernutrition. Right. So when we look at all of this together, what we have also seen is that the districts, actually we even do district level analysis, not just at state level. Right. So the districts where the literacy levels are low, also where gender ratios are poorer, also where women are getting married earlier. So the percentage of underage married women, underage mothers who are giving birth to children is higher, are also the districts where this hunger index seems to be worse. So it is not just about the food availability. Of course, that is a big contributor, but it's also very closely linked to multiple other development issues. So it is a long-term problem, and the solutions also have to be therefore thought about in a more holistic manner, in a more long-term solutions to these problems, because even if you make food available, suddenly the situation does not change overnight.
Okay.
So the behavior change plays a role as well.
You know, Vivek Reddy, when we talk about India growing and becoming a $5 trillion economy and whatnot, we talk about improving our rankings and ease of doing business, but these are deeply worrying numbers, are they not, Vivek? That you see that hunger has worsened, especially amongst children.
Well, Vasu, I think these global hunger index data or figures come with one caveat which the Global Hunger Index Forum points out. That is the Food Organization of the United Nations. They say that each year's figures are not comparable to the previous years. It's absolutely not erroneous to make these comparisons. That's what they say. So the indices that we gain or the rankings that we see here are totally independent of any previous rankings, because that's what the World Organization says. Don't compare it, because there will be several other data that will be fused into it, and the assessments are totally different.
If that's
so this is one caveat.
If straight off the bat, that's the first thing. I mean, I'm not sure if they quite said that, but even if you were to take that out of the equation, Vivek, we still are right at the bottom, right? We're 102 out of 117 countries. That's just,
Well,
I mean, we're
if you
worse
go by
than
2014,
Ethiopia.
we were 55 out of 76.
I'm not talking now comparatively to previous years. I'm saying if you just look at this year, we are 102 out of 117. We are below Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ethiopia and Rwanda.
Well, Vasu, look at it this way. In about the year 2017, that is 2-3 years after the Modi government came into power, we have started the Poshan Abhiyan. What is this Poshan Abhiyan? This integrates a number of schemes under the various ministries of the central government under one umbrella, and then implements it in about 350 districts in phase 1 for the first year. Now we are looking at sort of a huge improvements in this area of child malnutrition, of undernourishment,
But
of
improvement
stunting and wasting, because these are the 4 indices
No, but do you have
on which
do you
the
have
global
numbers?
hunger index is calculated.
No, but hold on. Do you have
Now, all
numbers
these-
to back up
there
the
are
claim that
targeted
we've
efforts
actually
now
made improvements
to-
in malnutrition and wasting? Because the global hunger
I
index
can-
data suggests the very opposite.
The numbers.
I can
the
provide
numbers,
some data very quickly.
No, the issue
So
is
if
this.
you-
The issue is this. A new project is being implemented by the union government.
Right.
And this is extended across the entire India. It has brought in within its umbrella all the schemes.
Okay.
And there are direct cash benefits also. It is
Okay.
also trying to induce behavioral change.
Okay. So
Now,
you're
we
saying
are
you
at the
don't have
stage
any
where
number, you don't
we
have
will
any
to
data
see
yet.
how this takes off.
Can I just
And
get Vrinda wanted to come in
we have-
briefly and then I'll come to Amitabh.
This
Okay,
will
let's just-
evolve and we will be able to get the data in future.
Okay, Vrinda, yes, briefly and then.
Yes,
Vrinda.
so I can quickly quote some data. So if you look at the percentage of anemic children, in 2005-06, it was around 70% in India. And in 2015-16, that's when the last National Family Health Survey was held, it came down from 70 to 58%.
Right.
Then on stunted children ratios, it was 48% in 2005. By 2016, it had come down to around 38%. So 10% improvement.
Okay.
Similarly, for underweight children also, we've seen some improvement. In the same time period, the breastfeeding campaign seemed to have done some work, because we also see that the number of children being breastfed, that's a key criteria in improving nutrition of very young children.
Indeed.
That has gone up. Yes.
But then
So those are the numbers. But then even
Vrinda,
then,
then
if you were...
how do you reconcile those improvements with the fact that we still seem to be doing quite poorly with both the global hunger index and as well as with your own findings?
Yes, so what we see is, even if you were not to look at the comparison with other countries, because like it was mentioned, the methodology of global hunger index, if you think that the basis keeps changing or the number of countries keep changing, so
Yes.
therefore if you don't want to focus on that, but even then our numbers are still very poor. So even now, if I just look at India numbers, 50% of children in India are anemic, 38% are stunted, etc., etc.
So even
And,
standalone, okay. So
yes,
you're saying even the improvements, it's good that we've
Yes.
improved, but we're still a long way to go. Amitabh Dubey?
And the under 5 mortality rate becomes a concern also in
Right.
calculation of this index.
Right. Amitabh Dubey, I mean, of course, the temptation would be to make this political and attack the BJP, but if you look at it, I mean, across states, this is a problem, including Madhya Pradesh, which is currently a Congress-run state, and that, according to, to the data by Vrinda's group, is the worst state, the most alarming state.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can reduce that particular thing to this government or that government, because this is a slightly longer phenomenon. I will point out that the central belt, the one Congress government that has brought in eggs for midday meals is the Chhattisgarh government, and Chhattisgarh is one of the hard-hit states. There's more resistance in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh from society. These are more vegetarian states, but some progress is being made. But you know, the index data pertains to 2016 to 18.
Right.
And if you look at the determinants, sanitation, water and food of these outcomes. In sanitation, we have, of course, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which I'm a supporter of.
Yes.
And it's a good idea, but the problem is it's been oversold. So the NSSO in 2016 found that 60% of the toilets didn't have water. In 2017, Gujarat was declared open defecation free, but the CAG found that 29% of toilets didn't have water. So I think this is a program that is important, but it's been oversold, and therefore you still see these bad outcomes. Relatedly, the rural drinking water program to finance Swachh Bharat, they had huge cuts in drinking water. The budget went from 11,000 crores a year in the UPA time to it's about 5,000-6,000 crores now. So obviously there's been a hit there in the quality of rural drinking water.
Right.
And finally, Food Security Act, which was rolled out in 2013,
Yes.
there have been severe implementation issues. And one of the problems with the Modi government has been this relentless focus on targeting, which has led to huge exclusion errors, usually because they've been focusing on Aadhaar. And a lot of the stories you hear are of the most vulnerable people who are unable to access their food, and therefore you have these bad
Right.
outcomes.
We had quite a few reports of deaths from Jharkhand, for example, which were supposed to be linked to lack of access to food grain because of Aadhaar. But Anjali, I think just to take up on the point you were making towards the very end, which was important, where I think you said that the idea was to actually increase the entitlement under the Food Security Act to also fortify the standard rations of rice and wheat with proteins like dal and millets, but that you said has not happened. I mean, some states I think have introduced it on their own, but centrally that's not happened.
Yes, and I think that's very significant when we look at the go downs overflowing. I think it's very important when we look at these indices, when we look at the fact that in India we've known for a long time that malnutrition amongst children is a huge problem. I think the real issue here is political will. And all states and the center need to recognize that this is a real problem. I mean, we are talking about moving towards becoming a superpower. If we can't feed our children, what are we talking about? And why is there no response? I mean, I think the big problem here also is the government is in denial. When we point out that there are starvation deaths because of exclusion due to Aadhaar, technology is there. We want technology to be leveraged for people, but not the wrong sort of technology.
Right.
When you start putting point of sale devices where people's anguthe ka nishan don't meet and they don't get their entitlements, and a little Santoshi dies in Jharkhand, there are other people who are, and children who are dying in other states,
Yes.
the government needs to recognize that there's a problem and act on it. And again now, instead of saying that this index might not be right and this figure is, you know, X, Y and Z, we need to really take this head on to say that there is a problem, we recognize the problem and we act on it.
Yeah.
The midday meal scheme needs to be much better
Yeah.
implemented.
Right.
More nutritious food needs to be given. We've been saying give eggs to children where children are willing to eat eggs. There isn't a problem. Please give them eggs, give them milk, give them fruit. That hasn't been happening.
Let's get Vivek in on this. Vivek, is the government, I mean, you mentioned that there is a scheme or schemes that are being tried to implement to try and fix this, but overall, is there a sense of denial that you get a piece of news as alarming as this and, you know, there's no clear sense that the government has woken up to the scale of the problem?
I'm really surprised, Vasu, with... no, I think I'm really surprised with this denial theory because it was in 2018 March, when this scheme was launched, that is Poshan Abhiyan scheme in Junju, Rajasthan by Prime Minister. It works directly under the PMO and the PMO is monitoring this. Now, what this scheme does is interesting. Unlike the previous schemes, this scheme brings within its umbrella all the central schemes and tries to do a targeted distribution of resources,
right,
including cash benefit transfers, and it includes PDS also within it. It includes fortification of food.
But why hasn't...
And it has brought in a number of issues.
But why don't
so
you...
the great thing is...
So one second, why hasn't entitlements...
Though the task is challenging...
Why haven't entitlements... So two questions. Why have you not increased entitlements under the Food Security Act as Anjali says the government, the Prime Minister had promised to do? And number two, why have a number of states, unfortunately many of these happen to be BJP-led states, though now some of them have changed hands, continue to resist the idea of having eggs in midday meal scheme because of this whole kind of bogey of, you know, vegetarianism and whatnot? I mean, that's a simple step that could make a difference.
I don't think egg is the only solution for this.
No, but sure. But
no,
why not start with that?
Malnutrition.
But why not? But I'm saying, why not at least start with that?
I don't think egg is the...
But why not start with that?
It need not be a universal solution, Vasu. That's what I'm saying. Well, it could be started in places where the government can, but it need not be a universal solution.
Right.
We need not get pedantic in thinking that only egg is the solution. And
No,
this
I'm
is
not
the only
suggesting
fault.
that. I'm saying why
there
not
There are various
as
other
a small
issues
step.
to it. There are diverse issues.
Okay.
Food
Vrinda-
fortification is an alternative.
Okay.
We have no affiliations for egg or no egg. But the point is that diverse programs are being implemented.
Right.
And it has just kicked off.
Right.
And I think 2023 is the target that is set for making
Okay.
India malnutrition free.
Right,
One
Vrinda-
thing that stands out is that there is a targeted effort.
Okay, well, at the moment that target does look a bit distant, but Vrinda, let me ask you this, that, again, because there's an interesting paradox here, that every year we go on reporting greater and greater agricultural output. We have a glut situation in this country. Farmers are not getting a price because of that. And yet this hunger problem is not getting fixed. So it's clearly not a supply problem. It's not that there's a lack of the availability of food.
Yeah, so there are multiple issues, like I earlier said. So it's not just about the production, but also the distribution, the affordability of the food. And also on the other side, even after people get that food, even if they eat it, it's also the sanitation, water quality that sometimes affects their bodies because they have frequent infections, etc. So that's one side of the story. But just to add another interesting data point,
Yes.
we had done some interesting analysis on the food production. So we had the data till about 2011, so slightly dated. But then until about 2011, our per capita sugarcane production was 300 kgs and wheat was 80 kgs. So it's not just about how much food we have, but what kind of food we have. What
Right.
kind of food are we producing, right?
Right.
And on the other side, I think as a supplement to the government spending, there is another angle that I would just like to mention here. So we also work with a lot of CSRs, and CSR is another issue in limelight right now. So in 4 years since the CSR law came into existence, around more than 50,000 crore has been spent as CSR in our country on various development issues. And of course, one of the issues there is eradication of hunger and malnutrition.
Right.
Guess how much has been spent? So out of more than 50,000 crores, companies have chosen to spend only about 2,500 crores has gone on this particular issue. Whereas if you look at how the numbers stack up for all the issues, education has received more than 13,000 crore.
Yes.
And malnutrition has received 2,500 crore. So the children are not well nourished, but we
Right.
want them to produce learning outcomes via good education.
Corporate
That's the
knowledge
irony.
funding education for some reason.
Yes,
not
yes.
so much.
So they have spent around 25% of their entire funding on
Right.
education alone, followed by healthcare and rural development. That takes up more than 50% of entire CSR chunk.
Right.
But and not only that, the data also shows that the spending on this issue is actually going down year on year.
Right.
So we are not
Which
even
is all-
recognizing that
which-
this still remains a big issue to solve.
Right, which is contributing to the problem. So very quickly, Anjali, as we wrap up, if there's one thing that you think the government could do straight away, one or two things, what would that be?
Well, one thing that the government should think of doing is universalizing food distribution, because we know that when the government tries to target, which is what we were told right now also, the poorest and the most deserving are the people who get left out of the security net. If
Right.
there is excess food grain, please universalize the system. That has been a long-standing demand of the food campaign,
Right.
because we know that when you universalize, that's when you are actually able to reach
Okay,
the last person.
universalizing
The
is the-
second
yeah.
thing is distribution needs to be done properly, transparently, and with proper grievance redress mechanisms. If
Sure.
somebody doesn't get the food grain that they're supposed to,
Yeah.
then they should be able to complain and get their entitlement. That
Right.
system is totally lacking in the states, whether it's BJP or any other
Sure,
party,
sure.
that doesn't matter.
course.
And the center needs to do its needful to increase entitlements without
Okay.
set up community kitchens. There are children on the streets who don't have food to eat. What is the problem?
Okay, fair enough. And also, of course, study states which have managed to fix the problem or at least improve the problem, like Kerala. We'll have to leave it there. That's all the time we have on Reality Check. Thanks so much for joining us and for watching. Good night.